Now that the dust has settled on the Infinity Saga with Endgame and we're firmly in the beginnings of Marvel's Phase 4, I thought it'd be appropriate to take a look at arguably cinema's most iconic villain since Vader. Avengers Infinity War has a total runtime of 2 hours and 30 minutes, yet its villain Thanos makes up just 29 minutes of that movie, a movie a lot of people said he was the main character of, with some additional teasers in Avengers 1 and then 2, and a short scene in the first Guardians movie. It still interests me that a villain with such little screen time had such a large impact, an impact strong enough that people could make an argument that he was the main character of Infinity War. Now that screen time is not accounting for other characters creating a sense of gravity around his name, speaking of him in Fear or in Caution, or the many movies that Tony has been anticipating an event like this.
My only curse is you.
It's suspense, but over multiple movies, so when we're really introduced to him here, he already holds a sense of weight in the scene.
I know what it's like to lose. Feel so desperately that you're right, yet to fail nonetheless.
I mentioned that Infinity War was a Thanos movie, or at least it's seen like that, and you know what, I can't disagree. He goes through a journey most heroes do, chasing a MacGuffin, making a large sacrifice for his goals, things most heroes do. On the surface, he looks like the protagonist, but as we know, he isn't one. In traditional archetypal storytelling, a hero is a person who is tasked to stop a villain from an evil goal. These characters are archetypal in nature, generally iconically evil, representing more of a force of evil if anything, and less of a character. It's the Emperor, Jafar, Sauron, Voldemort, or the Fire Lord. I think what the MCU did with Thanos was present him like those archetypal forces of evil, but throughout Infinity War show us that he's more than that. I would say Thanos wouldn't have worked had he just been a big scary monster from start to finish. Having his goals understood, having him be humanized in a sense in Infinity War is the reason he works in Endgame. Had he been the Endgame Thanos for both movies, the sort of one-note villain, I don't think he would have been nearly as compelling. He would have just fallen straight into that typical category of forces of evil. A problem that cinema is facing is a drought of good villains. Archetypal forces of evil are now a tired trope, and just being evil isn't good enough anymore. That's why Malekith, Ronan, and the many corporate baddies of the MCU are just sort of meh. In today's day and age, we've seen a switch, villains that make us understand their motivation, and villains that do one better, make us agree with their motivation, have now become all the rage. This is the Joker in The Dark Knight, or Killmonger in Black Panther. And whilst they go about their goals in the wrong way, which is what makes them villainous, it's hard to argue with their arguments, and that's where Thanos comes in. Thanos makes a pretty good point about overpopulation.
This universe is finite, its resources finite. If life is left unchecked, life will cease to exist.
And he doesn't just make it there for Gamora, he makes it again to Doctor Strange.
Titan was like most planets. Too many mouths, not enough to go around.
His goal, his reasoning, his why, so to speak, is so clear to the audience. Sure, genocide is never a good thing, but he believes that he's the only one with the will to act on such a hard decision.
I'm the only one who knows that. At least I'm the only one with the will to act on it.
One that would benefit the cosmos at large.
The children born have known nothing but full bellies and clear skies. It's a paradise.
I'm not saying I agree with Thanos, but he makes a fair point. I think Thanos becomes a villain in that his god complex supersedes his motivation. If Thanos wants the universe to prosper, he could use the 6 stones to, I don't know, create more planets, or even create more resources on those planets. Thanos wants to burden something, he wants to feel important. He wants to be the guy that takes the bullet to save the universe. He's got a hero complex in a way, through the lens of a man that sees himself like a god.
We'll never be a god.
So what we have here is someone whose ego trumps his motivation, but he really does see himself like a god, speaking as if he's talking down to people, calling people child, even more on the nose words saying that he must rest.
I finally rest and watch the sunrise on a grateful universe.
If the religious allegories aren't kicking in already, I'd say wake up. It's pretty obvious Thanos sees himself as a savior. I think a good question is, why listen to what Thanos has to say? Why as a villain do we kind of respect his opinion? In a weird way. Well, it's all about delivery. You see, most interactions we have in life can be boiled down to disc theory. From work colleagues to partners, how we flirt, to how we talk to a stranger. It's all just a balance of these factors. The first step is dominance. You have to establish yourself as an important voice in the room. You don't have to be the loudest or the funniest, but when you speak, do people listen? Do you rarely get talked over? Do you hold a sense of gravity? This is dominance, and Thanos does it really well. Now, once people respect your opinion and they're willing to listen, you move on to inducement. In other words, getting someone to think that your idea is theirs. This is being persuasive, charming, or making good points. Giving people solutions, but framing it in a way that they discover the answer. You're not just telling them the truth. In the case of Thanos, he's mastered the art of dominance. Dominance can be many things. It can be attractive, it can also be very intimidating, which Thanos uses to great effect. He speaks with a sense of authority that is calm. I wouldn't say he's soft-spoken, but rarely in the movie does he actually raise his voice. His presence has weight because of the fear other characters have of him. He's set up in a way that the audience instantly wants to hear what this guy has to say. I would then say that Thanos then struggles in his delivery of inducement, getting people on his side. Explaining his motivations is hard because of the nature of his end goal, an end goal that his foes are transfixed on.
I'm a survivor.
Who wants to murder trillions.
I'd say if Thanos framed his motivations as questions, he'd be more inclined to be more persuasive. Not telling people he's going to destroy half the universe, but making others understand why he is. Something that I really enjoyed about Thanos is the performance. Whilst it's a technical marvel, blending Josh Brolin's performance with the amazing technology at Weta, it's just nice to see that the guy has eyes. Weird point to make, but let me explain. Eyes are generally considered the windows to the soul. This level of connection you get from Thanos simply out of the eyes conveys so much information, so much emotion, to me being far more emotionally resonant than other big monsters, or other big grey monsters with red eyes. Darkseid. Now, at the time of making this, I've only just seen the Snyder Cut, and I think that the movie really shows off what I've been talking about. While Steppenwolf isn't a fantastic villain, he still has wants, desires, and a motivation well beyond his 2017 version. He isn't just a force of evil, he's a man with a why.
He will be pleased. He will see my worth again.
Sure, his motivations are not groundbreaking, but at least it's better than what we initially got. As for Darkseid, I wasn't expecting much of a character from him, just a few appearances, and that's what we got. Right now he fits into that first category, a malevolent force of evil, big, scary look, even scarier voice. He's just your standard bad guy. I think something that's important to understand is that these two villains are very different. It's like comparing apples to oranges. One is a traditional force of evil, and one is a new breed of evil. There's a certain level of iconography attached to villains. That iconography can make them instantly recognizable in a second. From their silhouette to something distinct about them, you could definitely say that this is the same for Thanos. That ball sack of a chin, and that infinity gauntlet. I think icons are hard to forget, and that'll be a part of the reason why Thanos will stick around for so long in the ether of movie villains people think of. I think the longevity of Thanos as a villain will hold over the years. I think he's definitely one of the more memorable cinematic villains in the last 10 years, not because he was built up over years of movies, but because he was earned in Infinity War. They did the character work and it paid off. He filled his role perfectly. Compelling, ruthless, menacing, well-motivated, iconic. He's all you could want in a villain, and it makes me excited to see what Marvel brings next.
His hair, whack. His gear, whack. His jewelry, whack. His footsteps, whack. The way that he talks, whack. The way that he doesn't even like to smile, whack. Me, I'm tight as